Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Terrible story. Happened in our own backyard. A woman was shot 3 times by her husband, and this was in Arlington. They'd been married for 15 years. The last 4 months, they've been separated, and she had gone to the cops repeatedly. Hey, my husband's threatening me, and I think he's actually going to act on it. He's been abusive in the past. What can I do? What should I do? Well, the cops gave her some advice. Cops were telling her, listen, if your husband can find you at home easily, then maybe you shouldn't go home. Maybe you shouldn't go stay with your mom either. Go stay with another friend or someone he doesn't know where they live and he can't find you. If you see him, give us a call. In the meantime, here's what else we recommend. Go get some paperwork on the guy. Go get a restraining order. Maybe you could go through the courts and maybe even have his guns taken away or something to that effect. But hey, while all that was in the process, turns out she was being followed. Her and a friend were in a car. They were being followed by the estranged husband. So they tried to lose them. They pulled over into a park to notify authorities, which sounds awful. Look, I don't want to second guess them, but I mean, you're on a cell phone. You can make a call from a moving car. But this is awful. The husband pulls up in front of him, gets out, shoots her 3 times. Police dash camera picks up the action a little bit after that. And the estranged husband did not put his gun down when the cops asked him to. And he sort of died by cop suicide. I hate that. I hate these people. They're such cowards. You know you're going to die. You just can't do it yourself. So you make a cop do it. Not to get off on a side tangent, but my goodness, man, just take yourself out. Don't make another human being have to live with the nightmares of having to shoot you. God, these people are terrible. Anyway, that being said, something that comes up a lot in the gun-loving circles, I have a lot of friends who are gun nuts. I sometimes find them very annoying, but in this case, I think they make a very good point that at some point, some cop, someone in a position of authority should have told her, hey, if you want to be safe, why don't you get a gun and carry it around in your purse? Now, I don't want them to tell her, you need to get a gun and carry it around in your purse. But if you're the type of person who could be comfortable with such things, even if you're not comfortable with guns, are you more comfortable carrying a gun or just being exposed? Because one of the simple backstops, philosophical backstops to gun rights, to the Second Amendment, is really the question, do you want this little woman she looks tiny. She looks like she's like 5'4", 130 pounds. Do you want her to be able to defend herself against a 250-pound man or not? And if the answer is yes, then you're pro-gun. You should be pro-gun. Philosophically speaking, in your head, you should be pro-gun. And the cops are out there. They should be indifferent to guns. But they should be able to remind you, hey, we have this little thing called the Second Amendment. And we're in a state that not only allows it, but damn near celebrates it. Why don't you go get a gun? You can do all this other stuff too. You can work on the restraining order. You can move out. You can start filing the divorce paperwork. You can go stay with a friend. You can give us a call anytime you're being followed and we'll come help you out. But in the meantime, why don't you get a gun? There was another story that I was going to do last week that was almost exactly like this, except it happened in another part of the state. And it was a trifecta. I think it was in like Wichita Falls or something. But there was a woman, almost the exact same story. She had been married for a long time to this guy, and he had been abusive, and she had had enough. And when she tried to split up with him, that's when he started making actionable, violent threats. She did the same thing. She went to the cops. The cops got a restraining order, and they actually got... They had enough evidence that they could charge him with a crime and, possibly make it illegal for him to carry guns. Oh, wow. He got a gun anyway? Yeah. So this guy who already had charges, who already had a restraining order, actually went to a place, found her where it was a gun-free school zone. I think she was at a school or a federal building. I forgot which one it was, but it was like the trifecta of gun control. Didn't work. And this is something that you and I intuitively know about gun control, but there's a lot of our neighbors who are just going to have to learn the hard way. They're just going to have to see enough bodies before they realize gun control doesn't stop criminals. Gun control is not a law that where if someone is willing to break the law against, murder, that they would be stopped by this. Oh, well, geez, there's a sign here. I guess I better stop my evil doing. Can we just throw that in there? Because I feel this exact same way when it comes to keeping our kids safe at school. When we talk about, hey, we should let teachers carry guns, a lot of people hear that and they take a bad faith interpretation of that and they run in the wrong direction. That's crazy. Teachers have so much to deal with, with lessons and discipline problems and standardized testing and parents being horrible and administration being horrible and all these new rules. Now they have to worry about carrying a gun. No, I'm not forcing anyone to carry a gun. But there are people out there who are comfortable with it. And if you're already comfortable with it and you already feel like carrying a gun and you would be okay with it and you feel like you're adequately trained, carry a gun. Gun nuts serve a purpose in our society. Everyone doesn't have to be a gun nut for them to be effective. The specter that everyone saw when the cartoon contest for Prophet Muhammad happened in Garland, and the two guys got out with their AKs, and the Islamo-fascists were going to mow down as many Texans as possible for the crime of insulting their prophet. Well, what happened? Well, we're in Texas, so we had guns, and we shot back. And actually, we shot straighter. And by we, I mean a 63-year-old retired cop who was working a security guard detail beat the two guys with AKs. So what happens there? Well, I bet you if we have another Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest, there would be some people that would think twice about coming to shoot that up. Sets a deterrent. There's a deterrent factor. I would much rather be reading the news right now and going to our news partner, WFAA.com, and reading the story about how some estranged wife was attacked by her husband and she shot him in the face. I would much rather read that story. I would much rather read the story about how that other woman in Wichita Falls, same thing. I would, if it was my daughter and she had been married to some guy who turned south for whatever reason, maybe we just misread him, maybe he was a very convincing sociopath, maybe he had a head injury, I don't know. But if it was my daughter and she was being stalked by her estranged husband and we were working through the divorce process, I would make sure she had a gun in her purse and she knew how to use it and she was comfortable using it. Can we just throw that in there in the future? I mean, it means one thing if I say it, but not all these battered wives and estranged wives are listening to me. The cops need to be telling you that. The cops they have to remind you about your constitutional rights with the Miranda warnings. The Miranda case, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court of law, yada, yada, yada. Cops are legally required to remind you of your rights in that situation. Shouldn't there be some kind of, I don't even know if it should be a legal requirement, but just how about we throw it in there as one of the many bullet points, one of the many pieces of advice? That should be a standard. Hey, there's a thing called the Second Amendment. So ultimately, if this piece of garbage excuse for a husband comes at you, I would rather be going to pick up his body than yours. Can we just throw that in there? 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. What do you think? Should we tell people who are being stalked and being threatened to carry a gun? Should cops be encouraging that? Or does that make us less safe in a metropolitan area of 7 million people? We can't have a bunch of people carrying guns. Yeah, we can. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. It can't be that simple, can it? All these stories, there's too many of these stories of some battered woman, usually a wife, that gets killed by her estranged husband or boyfriend. And you hear about all the warnings. This didn't just happen out of the blue. This has been an escalating fight over 4 months of separation, where these women go to the cops and they ask them for help, and the cops give them some advice. And I'm not saying the advice that they give them isn't valid. Yeah, you probably should not go stay at home where he can easily find you. You probably shouldn't go stay at your mom's where he can easily find you. If you can go hide out at a friend's house, you don't know. All this is good. All this is good advice. Getting the restraining orders, getting the divorce proceedings going, getting your children out of harm's way. All good advice. Why aren't they throwing in, hey man, why don't you carry a gun? Can we just throw that in there? If you're comfortable with it, carry a gun. Is there some reason why they're not saying that? Is that illegal? Is there some sort of liability that happens if they carry a gun and something wrong happens? Look, maybe we should just focus on Texas. Let's just try this in Texas. If you're going to be in Vermont and you want if you want your daughters and sisters to get shot by their estranged husband, fine. Tell them don't defend themselves. Tell them to go get a court piece of paper. That'll protect you. It just sounds silly. It sounds so obviously common sense. Like, why isn't this happening already? 800-288-9227. Because the question is, I think this is like a duh, but since it doesn't exist, how am I wrong? Shouldn't the cops recommend carrying a gun to battered women. Rosie. Hey, Rosie, you're in Dallas, and now you're on the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP. What do you think?
I think that is an absurd question to even think about, trying to throw the blame on, I haven't seen a cop do this. Why doesn't a cop do that? First of all, the cops get blamed for everything as it is. So that's another added risk there. And number two, the cops are the least qualified based off of that conversation, that report that was done by that person on the incident that she reported something. A female does not report her abuse until it's like the 9th time. So,
right.
I mean, shouldn't the best friend be telling them that? Shouldn't the mother, the father, the relative, somebody that knows them better? A cop, like I said, is the least qualified to do it because, number one, cops don't promote. They can't promote anything. They don't promote opinions. They can only, tell them, hey, this is the process. This is what, But as far as, giving an opinion on that, let's say you listen to a cop and that person goes and buys a gun and the cop didn't see, because the cop doesn't come with a crystal ball, didn't see the mental state she was in or that she's usually in. And she goes and buys a gun, doesn't secure it. Cop doesn't know that that person is a neglectful person like that. Kid gets shot. And guess who gets blamed? The cop told him to buy a gun.
Okay, well, hang on. Can I just go ahead and address some of the things you brought up? Because when you say cops aren't allowed to suggest anything, well, yeah, they do. They suggested all kinds of things in these two stories that I'm referencing. Going through the court documents and getting the restraining order, not staying at your mom's and not staying at your house and not even driving your car, having a friend drive you around so you can maintain anonymity. Can't they just throw that in there? And hey, if you're comfortable with the gun, if that's not something that bothers you, just throw that in there as one of the bullet points, one of the suggestions. You're not even okay with that?
Not necessarily, because as part of the process, if there's a family violence disturbance, someone should leave because if, it occurs again, cops come back again, then it looks bad. I mean, you try to get someone to leave.
Okay, but hang on. That's your example. Hang on. Let me stop you here because we don't have all that time. So the cops did make a bunch of suggestions, and this woman turned out getting shot anyway. So your worst case scenario, they could make this suggestion and the woman could harm herself. Well, they made the suggestions they did, and she still got harmed. So clearly this is inadequate what they're doing now. Why not just throw that in there?
Well, in that case, shouldn't she be mature enough if she's getting in relationships to see that a person is turning crazy?
Sure, she did. Yeah, she did, and she was getting out. That's exactly. Let me ask you this, Rosie: if you had a gun in your purse and there was a guy that was stalking you, are you more or less safe with that gun in your purse? You personally?
I myself am very much more safe because I am trained to do that.
So let's let everyone else have the same rights you have, Rosie.
Oh, they do. They have them. It's up to them. I mean, it's all. Well,
let's remind them. Let's remind them of that. So you're cool. You can handle a gun, but these other people, they're idiots, and they might end up shooting their own kid. Is that why you're against this?
Yeah, I mean, if they're adult enough to make the choice of being in a relationship, it rarely does a relationship go south just like that without any signs. Like I said, it's 9 times before. She decides. All right.
So if you pick the wrong guy, then you don't get to defend yourself. You just have to hope he doesn't kill you.
I think I would have the common sense that he's the wrong guy. You like I said, it doesn't just come overnight. Rare does it happen that way. The signs are there.
Okay.
So if you choose to stay in that relationship, that's been a choice you made. You kind of put yourself in that situation.
So that is your case. If you pick the wrong guy, then you don't get to defend yourself. That's your bad call.
No. The cops aren't taking the gun away from her defending herself. I just don't see it as the responsibility of the cop. Like I said, a person, the best friend. Why don't we say, why didn't the best friend tell him? Why didn't the father tell him? Why didn't the mother tell him? They're more qualified. They know more about her life. They know how she reacts to something.
Right. But you take the advice of cops more than you would take the advice of your best friend because cops are walking people through this all day, every day. They have a wealth of experience. They are the law enforcement authorities. I mean, that's what the word authority means. These are the people you lean on for advice on dealing with this situation precisely because they have the experience. Your friend may have dealt with another acquaintance or two here here that's had an estranged husband, but cops do this all day, every day. They see estranged, they see mad couples fighting on a daily basis. And if they're the avenue giving out that information, that's where it'll get to the most people who need it the fastest, not, well, your friend should have said something.
Yeah, well, I don't see why it would be a cop's responsibility to remind them of what's on the news every day. Gun control, gun this, gun that. So, I mean, it's kind of a given. It's a kind of a common sense.
You can't say it's a common sense. So I just gave you the example of 2 people who died, or not died, but got shot by their husband because...
Yeah, but then a guy, an officer suggests...
So if you don't have common sense, then just go ahead and die. Just let your husband kill you?
Well, and...
If you're dumb enough to pick him?
So what you're saying is because a cop didn't recommend it, now a cop recommends the gun, half the time these people are not... They have to go through training and training.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't. Here, hang on a second. First off, the Second Amendment doesn't say you have the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As long as you get training, and a gun is a really simple machine. You don't need a college course or any course to figure out how a gun works. How did we have gun rights for the first 246 years of our country's existence? How many of them you think went through formal training? How many of the Minutemen in the Revolutionary War? How many of the Union soldiers who ended slavery? How many of them had legit classroom training with a gun? No, you have your gun rights, and I have faith in the ability and mental capacity of the average American to trust them with their Second Amendment rights. No, you don't get to carry a gun if and only if you've had proper training. No, you are not safer if you are unarmed. I mean, these are, you keep saying these terms like common sense. Well, he shouldn't have picked him. Well, she should have known. Well, no, people make mistakes. This is a human endeavor. People pick the wrong guy all the time. Sometimes crazy people are good at hiding it for long periods of time. I would recommend against picking crazy people. Yes, I agree with you on that. But once we're in that situation, now what? And you notice how it was okay for her, but not okay for you. 800-288-WBAP if you have any comments on that. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Brad Barton, WBAP's own chief meteorologist. We're going to get to 100 this week, aren't we? It's starting to feel like summer. That's next. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.